That's why I made some changes, because I wasn't happy with the speed with which our veterans were taken care of. I wasn't happy with it. We made changes because we want them taken care of. We want them to have a choice so that they can run to a private doctor.
President Trump explaining his decision to replace VA Secretary David Shulkin with his personal doctor, Ronny Jackson. Can Dr. Jackson make up for lost time with the VA? Here now is Kathy Barnette, veteran and conservative political commentator. Good to see you. So thanks for coming on. Are you happy with the changes at the VA?
I'm not sure if we're going to be happy moving forward. I don't know if anyone is going to be sure one way or the other. There's so much disinformation that's out in the public, and there's so much manufactured rage that's going on right now. I think it would do everyone really good to remember that, especially at the executive level and below, everyone serves at the pleasure of this president, and he has within his purview the right to move people as he sees fit.
Sure, he does. But I'm just wondering if you felt that Shulkin was part of the problem and that getting him out of there and the doctor in is a good thing.
Yeah, you know, Dr. Shulkin has done a tremendous amount of good from the time that President Trump appointed him to lead the VA. He did a wonderful job in reducing the amount of time it takes for a veteran to receive a decision. He turned the GI Bill into the forever GI Bill. I, for one, benefited from that particular program, and a number of other things as far as getting poor performers out of the VA. However, again, the president is within his purview to be able to pivot and move in a different direction if he sees fit. And so I think that is, I think that's something that is paramount. For me, and I'm sure for many veterans, what's really important to us is that there are over 20 million veterans, and 22 commit suicide every day. So one of the things
awful. Just
it
awful.
is, and one of the things we want to do is to see continued movement.
Yeah, it's not being addressed properly, and you know, one of the things, Shulkin, of course, is not happy about being fired, and he addressed that in an editorial he wrote in which he talked about privatizing the VA and his charge that some people in the administration want to privatize the VA. Let's just play what he says and get your reaction. Go ahead.
We are not trying to privatize the VA. We are trying to improve and transform the VA. What I said in my editorial is that there are a number of political appointees within VA that are pushing to privatize much faster than I think is in the interest of veterans.
Now, I haven't heard that from anybody in the VA that they want to privatize all VA. I have heard that they want to give veterans an option to choose between either going to a VA hospital and taking maybe a voucher of some kind and going to a private facility. That's different from privatization, right?
Yes, it is. And not only that, but again, I think a lot of Dr. Shulkin's editorializing this issue is really political cover. But again, you know, when I was in the military, most veterans have an antidote of going into the VA. And some of us will even have the commentary. You go in with a splinter in your finger, you may come out with an amputation. That's a very real thought and consideration. And we've seen that. There's a reason why the VA is in the state that it's in. And there's a tremendous amount that is owed to the bureaucracy of it all. So perhaps getting someone outside of the bureaucracy to come in and take a fresh look at it may not be a bad thing. But again, the president is within his purview to pivot if he so chooses to.
Absolutely. But it'd be great to have veterans have more options than what they now have. Finally, we don't have much time.
Competition works.
But very quickly, there is a town in Connecticut that wants to replace Memorial Day, or at least force some children to go to school on Memorial Day because of the snow days. What do you think of that?
Yeah, you know what? Listen, this school will have us to believe that this is just a clerical issue, that it's just an administrative way to resolve the snow days. But I don't think it is. And in fact, I think not observing Memorial Day, there's no difference between that and taking a knee during the national anthem or turning our back on the American flag. It's the same form of disrespect. It's the same subtle move to redefine our American values, and we need to take it seriously.
Kathy Barnette, great to see you, Kathy. Thank you very much.
You.
Have a great weekend. Appreciate it.